All right. Did you guys get the recording message? Good. Okay. All right. So, hi, everyone, and welcome to How Strong Leaders Navigate Difficult Conversations. You might be here because you manage people and you're afraid to hurt someone's feelings when you give constructive feedback. Do me a favor. If this sounds familiar, share a one in the chat. Anyone feel familiar with that? And you don't have to choose one over the other. Okay. Or maybe you feel intimidated when disagreeing with a peer or holding someone accountable for something that they didn't follow through on. That can be difficult. Share a number two in the chat if you can relate to this. Am I seeing the chat? I just want to make sure. Okay, just someone give me a thumbs up so I know I'm seeing the chat. I don't think I see. There's a thumbs up. Okay, but does anyone see anything in the chat or no? Yeah? Okay. I am not seeing the chat. So if you guys are chatting to me, I am not seeing it. So let me figure out. There it is. All right. Technical difficulties, user error. Thank you for that. I see now the ones, the twos. Okay, wonderful. All right, perfect. All right. Perhaps you don't know how to confidently approach a difficult conversation with your boss, maybe asking for a raise or pushing back on a decision that he or she has made without sounding disrespectful. Share a number three in the chat if the thought of having an uncomfortable conversation with any superior, whether it's your boss, it could be an internal customer, or even a client, brings on a stomach ache or a mini panic attack. Number three, Zach and John, Catalina. Yeah, absolutely. Lots of number threes, but not with your boss. Okay. All right. Yeah, it could be someone else who's in a position of authority over us for sure. Well, I want to thank you all for your vulnerability. And as you can see, you are not alone. These kinds of conversations are uncomfortable and daunting for most of us, if not all of us. And over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to share with you four simple steps that can help you approach these conversations with more confidence, clarity, intention, and influence. And if you stay with me till the end, I'll also share one bonus tool that many leaders find surprisingly helpful when a tough conversation starts to go sideways. So, by way of introduction, I am Michelle Gilbert. And if we are just getting to know each other for the first time, let me just briefly share a little bit about myself. I spent 34 years in public relations and corporate communications. And today, as a certified leadership coach, I leverage my communication expertise and my decades of experience in corporate America to help smart, capable leaders show up to their most important conversations with confidence and influence so that they create the outcomes that they want. And I would say that my clients are probably a lot like many of you. They're rock stars in their organizations. They deliver results and they're doing all the right things, but they still feel stuck when it comes to difficult conversations. And quite frankly, that makes sense because these conversations are hard and these moments matter. And that is why I designed this webinar to be able to give you some clarity on why these conversations feel so difficult and what's at stake when we avoid them. And finally, how we can show up to them in a way that actually moves the conversation forward and ultimately leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. So, as we go through today's session, if something resonates, with you or reminds you of a conversation that you're currently dealing with, feel free to drop a quick comment in the chat. I really enjoy seeing what's coming up for people in real time. And if you stay to the end, I will absolutely take whatever questions you have. So let me start by sharing why this topic is one that I care deeply about and why I know how uncomfortable these moments can be. So most leaders have struggled with difficult conversations at some point in their career. And with 34 years of experience, trust me, I've witnessed many awkward moments. And if I'm being honest with you, I haven't always been great at them myself. There were plenty of conversations that I've avoided throughout my entire career, moments where I stayed silent instead of speaking up. So, if I can help you skip through some of the missteps that I made by sharing what I've learned as a communicator and a certified coach, as well as from my own experiences, then this time will be well spent for all of us. So, before we dive in, let's take a quick moment to reflect. I want you to think back to a time when you avoided a difficult conversation. And this is just for you to think about. You don't have to put anything in the chat. Who was the person? Why did it feel so uncomfortable? Was it someone in a position of power over you? Was it a direct report whose feelings you didn't want to hurt? Or maybe it was a colleague where you felt there was no way to win the conversation. Now I want you to ask yourself, how did it feel to avoid the conversation? What did it bring up for you? And what was the outcome of not having it? Did things get better? Did they stay the same? Maybe they got worse. And finally, how has that moment shaped how you've handled or not handled similar conversations since? If you feel comfortable, feel free to drop in the chat one word that describes how you feel when you know a tough conversation is coming. Anxious. Thank you, John, for your honesty and vulnerability. Yeah, more anxiousness, sad. Yeah, nervous about the unknown on their response. Absolutely, Tracy. It does bring up a lot of nerves, and that's where sometimes the stomach ache comes in, at least for me. Okay. Thank you all. Well, as you can see, you're not alone. We all struggle with difficult conversations, and it's completely understandable if you don't feel comfortable to put it in the chat. That's okay. Let me give you an example. Recently, one of my clients was dreading a conversation with a colleague who they often clash with, and they knew their defensiveness might get in the way. So we worked together on a strategy to help them lead with curiosity instead. And we're going to talk more about curiosity in a couple of minutes. But that one shift helped my client stay grounded, and it turned what could have been a very tense exchange into one that was a lot more productive. And that is the kind of shift that I hope you'll start to experience, even with just one new strategy or perspective from today's session. So, as I shared earlier, we're going to learn 4 simple steps to help you approach tough conversations with more clarity, confidence, intention, and influence. Because when you avoid them, you carry that weight with you. And it shows up in your stress, in your self doubt, and in your relationships. But when you face them with the right mindset and tools, you create trust. You're going to gain credibility. Your self-confidence will build and you will grow as a leader. So if you're comfortable, please share in the chat. How would it feel to approach your next difficult conversation feeling more grounded and confident? Empowering? Yeah. Relieved? Insightful? These are great, great descriptions. Okay. Feeling like a right has been lifted. Breathe. Yeah. I love these. Lots of relieved. Okay. So here's the funny thing about all of this. There is nothing magical or proprietary about these 4 steps. And that is why they work, because they are simple and they're effective and they're easy for you to start implementing today. In fact, you may already be practicing some of them and you don't even realize it. But sometimes we all need a little bit of guidance or maybe a nudge to put that knowledge into practice when it matters most. So let's dive in. And if you want to take notes, this is a good place to start because I've got some practical tips that are coming your way. So, one of the biggest mistakes we make in difficult conversations is assuming that the other person processes information the same way that we do, but they don't. And that is where so many conversations start to go sideways. So, let's start with step number 1, which is know your audience. Before you open your mouth, pause and think, who am I speaking to? Are they someone who likes big picture thinking, or do they need all the details? Do they prefer direct, no fluff communication, or are they more diplomatic and nuanced? And most importantly, what matters to them in this situation? When you can see the conversation from someone else's lens, you're more likely to speak in a way that lands with them, not just in a way that makes sense to you. So if you're comfortable, drop one word in the chat that describes the person you need to talk to. Not their name, but their vibe. So do they come across intense? Do you find them critical? Maybe they're distracted. Maybe they're calm or even fair. What word describes the person that you feel you need to have a conversation with? Judgmental, critical, very distracted. Okay, aggressive. That's a tough one. Yeah. Okay. When you see the person clearly and you understand what matters to them, you're setting the stage for a conversation that will resonate with them. So, step number 1 is know your audience. Okay. That leads us to step number 2. Prepare what you want to say. Prepare what you want to say. And this may seem obvious, but it amazes me how many people skip this step all the time. And strong leaders don't wing it when the stakes are high. And when we're having tough conversations, let's face it, the stakes are high. So here's what I want you to ask yourself. What's the real issue that you want to address? And what is the key message that you want to get across? And just as important, what do you want to avoid saying because it could derail the conversation? I also want you to think about the outcome. What do you want to be different when the conversation is over? I'm going to give you another example. So I've been working with a seasoned leader who's gearing up for a pivotal conversation with their boss about stepping into a bigger role next year. And so together we've been building a strategy that highlights their strengths, but it also anticipates any concerns that the boss might raise so that they're prepared to address those concerns with confidence. And it's that kind of preparation that shifts a conversation from hopeful to high impact. So, step number 2 is prepare what you want to say because preparation gives you clarity and clarity gives you calm. And calm is contagious in a hard conversation. All right, that leads us to step number 3. And this one I feel is a game changer. Be curious and listen with the intent to understand. And I know we hear this all the time. But one of the biggest mistakes that we make is going into tough conversations thinking that we already know the full story. But are we making assumptions about what the other person is thinking? So here's what you could do. Try opening the conversation with something like this. I want to understand your perspective on this. That one line can completely shift the energy from tension to openness. I'll repeat it if you're taking notes. I want to understand your perspective on this. And by all means, feel free to customize these phrases to sound more like you. So, step 3 is be curious and listen to understand versus to immediately respond. Because when people feel seen and heard, they're much more willing to engage in a real conversation, even if it's a hard one. So let me ask you, and I'm going to ask you to share in the chat if you're comfortable. How do you usually feel when someone cuts you off or clearly isn't listening in a tense moment? Drop one word in the chat, or 2 or 3, that captures how you feel when someone isn't listening to you. How does that feel? Irritated? Very irritating, Stephanie. I'm with you. I know for me, I feel, oh, dismissed. I feel disrespected, unimportant. Yeah, dismissed. Takes the confidence out of you. Okay. So now I want you to imagine how different that moment would feel if the person said to you, I really want to understand your perspective. That is the shift that we're going for. Imagine if you feel that way, how you can make other people feel that way as well. All right, so finally, let's get to step number 4. Have a strategy for managing your own emotional triggers. Even if you walk into a conversation fully prepared, let's face it, we are still human. There might be a tone or a phrase, even a facial expression that can set you off. And your triggers may be different for different people. So I want you to ask yourself, what does tend to trigger you? And how do you usually react? Do you get defensive? Maybe you shut down? Or do you go into fix it mode? The goal is we want to learn to spot these reactions in ourselves early and have a plan. And sometimes that plan can be as simple as taking a breath or pausing before you respond. Or maybe even naming what's happening. Ah, there's my trigger. I saw that facial expression on that person. I am not going to knee-jerk react and let it take over this conversation. So we've all been there. We've been in a conversation where something just hits a nerve. So if you feel comfortable, share in the chat how you typically feel or how you react when you get triggered in a tough conversation. Pause and reflect. Okay. One of the executives taught me breathe, count to 3, and then respond, and that's helped. Absolutely, Krista. I pause, you breathe, and you think about your words. That's great. And I'm going to give you a tip that I use. I keep water near me. And when I need to pause and collect my thoughts, even if I'm not thirsty, I take a quick drink because nobody's going to second guess. Oh, she needs to pause. She must feel triggered right now. They might just think I'm thirsty. Okay. So here's something else you can do. If you're triggered by something that someone says, I love this phrase that you can use to de-escalate the moment and even help you collect more information. What makes you say that? The more you can self-manage in the moment, the more control you have over the direction and outcome of the conversation. All right, I'll repeat it one more time. What makes you say that? So step 4 is to have a strategy for fighting off the triggers. I'm going to review the 4 steps one more time just in case you didn't get all the notes. So step 1 is know your audience so that you can tailor your approach to the other person's communication style. Step 2 is prepare what you want to say. And I want to emphasize this isn't about perfectly scripting everything. But the worst time to think about what you want to say is right before you say it. Step 3 is to be curious and listen with the intent to understand. And this is where the magic happens, and you begin to have a meaningful conversation. And finally, step 4 is to create a strategy for fighting off your own triggers so that they don't get in the way of everything that you've worked to build in steps 1, 2, and 3. So earlier I mentioned that I'd share a bonus tool that you can use when a conversation starts to get tense. And this is one of my favorites because it lowers defensiveness and it keeps the conversation constructive. So keep in mind that uncomfortable conversations are usually just as difficult for the person on the receiving end. And you have that ability to lower any defensiveness by how you approach it. Different phrases are going to work better depending on the person and the situation. So I'm going to share a few that can help shift the tone and keep things constructive. So if you're offering feedback or you're navigating tension, try clarifying your intent. You might say something like, my goal here is to be helpful, not critical. Or you could say something like, I am sharing this because I really care about our work and our relationship. And these lower the emotional temperature, they signal collaboration and help shift the conversation from defensiveness to creating space for a productive dialogue. Now, if you're trying to understand their point of view, here are a couple of openers that invite perspective without judgment. I might be missing something. Can you walk me through how you see it? And you notice the tone in my voice comes across curious. I'd really like to understand your perspective. Can you help me see how you're thinking about it? These work because they show that you're open. They're going to keep you grounded and they activate that dialogue instead of debate. So as we get to the end of this webinar, I cannot promise you that these 4 steps are going to erase all of your fear, all of your tension, or all of your discomfort. And quite honestly, they're not going to. Here's what I can assure you. When you walk into a difficult conversation with a plan, something powerful happens. You stop leading from survival and you start leading with intention. And that is where real leadership lives. So as we wrap up, the question becomes, well, where do we go from here? So for some of you, these 4 steps may be enough to help you move forward on your own. And if that is you, I hope our time together gives you fresh insight, some practical tools, and a renewed sense of clarity for handling tough conversations with more confidence and ease. But for others who find it helpful to talk through a situation and build a strategy before stepping into a conversation, if you're thinking this is exactly the kind of support you need to grow as a leader, the next step is very simple. Book a complimentary strategy session with me. And I'm going to share this link right now in the chat, but I'm also going to be sending it to you with the follow-up email where you're going to get the replay so that if there's anything that you missed during our time together, you're going to have it. And these calls are designed for those of you who are navigating a real situation right now, whether that's a difficult conversation with a colleague, it could be a boss, maybe it's someone on your team, and you want a thoughtful strategy before stepping into it. So on that call, what we'll do is we're going to take these 4 steps that we discussed today and we're going to turn them into a clear strategy for the conversation that you have coming up. So it's going to be really customized to your specific situation. We'll strategize on the right approach and we'll identify what to say so that you're going to go in feeling more prepared and grounded. And this is the work that I do every day with my clients. We take your real life strategies and your real life challenges and we plan, we strategize, and we practice them together so that you can build your confidence and handle the tough stuff and lead from strength, not stress. I want to promise you, I swear, there is no commitment or obligation. And even if coaching isn't the right fit for you, you're going to walk away with practical recommendations tailored to your situation. So, like I mentioned, I'm going to be sending you an email a little later today with the link to this recording, and I'll also share a link to schedule that call if you want. There's no pressure. It's really just an open door to have a one-on-one conversation to talk through your situation and get some extra support customizing these steps for your upcoming conversation. So I want to thank you so much for being here today and for doing the brave work of showing up. I want you also to remember that difficult conversations, they're never easy, but with the right mindset and tools, you can handle them with more confidence and influence. So if you have questions, I would love to take a few now. And if you need to jump and you want to connect afterward, don't hesitate to reach out. If we're not connected via LinkedIn, please connect with me. I would love to keep the conversation going. So I am going to stop the recording so that if anyone does want to stay on and ask questions, you can do so without the recording going on. Let's see, how do I do that? There we go.